So Kizzy, the first question that I've got for you, we want to take it back a little bit and we want to hear about your entry into the legal journey. So when did you first decide that you actually wanted to become a lawyer?
So once finished school, stayed on at sixth form, did my degree in law. I knew by then, what I wanted to do is I wanted to be a solicitor, but I wanted to be an advocate as well.
Okay.
So by the time I secured the training contract, I got the job I really wanted. I was doing criminal litigation, which again is something that I really wanted to do. And after about 6 years of that, again by chance, you may ask me this question, but by chance I was on a case that I think really changed the trajectory of my legal career today.
Yeah. Wow, okay. So in chambers, but also a local kind of law firm, right? How did you go about doing that? Did you just, walk in and ask for experience? Did you know someone?
So I didn't really have sort of family, or my parents didn't have friends who were lawyers as such. So I literally did what you just said. I went to our local high street, I walked into the nearest solicitor's firm that I found, and I just said, do you do work experience? If you do, would you be willing to let me work with you for a week and just shadow one of the solicitors? And I just said, yeah, okay. So I did. I think things were a lot easier then. From what I understand now, it's quite hard to get work experience. Firms just don't want to offer it. It's not because they don't want to help people, it's just for a lot of reasons it's not feasible to offer lots of people work experience for a week to week at a time. And there's also issues around trying to make things fair. So whereas before it used to be people you knew could get you in, you'd have to step up into the profession, you don't want to do that as a profession. You would like to make it as fair as you can for everybody, so you don't have the managing partner's friend, friend's son coming in, So I think for me, 20 odd years ago, it was a lot. That's probably was 20 years ago. So if I should admit that on screen, but it was a lot easier to just walk in off the street and get a week unpaid.
Yeah. So you said by the time you finished university, you'd realised what area of law specifically you wanted to get into. So criminal litigation is where you first kind of started out, right?
Yeah.
And I'm assuming for you to get to that point, it was because you tried different things out. So you've had experiences either with various firms, or you went to open days or presentations, etc., etc. So what was that process like for you in terms of, were there any applications involved for you to get those work experiences, or did you just have to kind of Google it? Like how did you figure that part out?
When I was doing my degree, I deliberately did a degree that had a year in the middle where you could do work experience.
That's cool.
And again, I don't think there were many university degrees that were doing that at the time. If I remember rightly, it was Brunel, it was Nottingham Trent, I think, maybe a couple of others. And I wanted to stay sort of in London, close enough to go home, but far enough away to live on campus. So I did a year, 2 6-month placements, both at criminal-based firms, but who did kind of law service offering. And I was then exposed to housing law, contract law, actions against the police, and employment. I kind of knew pretty rapidly that those areas weren't really for me. I quite enjoyed going to tribunals for housing litigation, but for me, it just didn't excite me as much as crime. I continued to apply for work experience placements after the degree. So even though I had gone through the route of applying for the training contract, even during my summers, half terms and all of that, the downtime that you get, I just used that to find ways to do something to do with law. And even if it was going back to one of the placements that I had carried out during my degree, I did that. I kept in touch with some of the barristers that I'd met. They told me about events that were going on. So again, I didn't know it was networking, but I realised the importance of keeping in touch with people. And even to this day, I met one of the solicitors that I did my work placement with in, 1997. I met him a few weeks ago at an event.
That's nice.
Which was so strange, but again, we remembered each other, we kept in touch. He said, I've been following your career. Oh my gosh, that's this thing. So, it really is important to have that personal contact with people, because you never know.
Make sure that you've got those touch points in between so that you can still have that. So, I think that's really helpful. And I want to fast forward and spill the end a little bit. So, you're now currently a partner, right?
Yes.
But there was a whole bunch of things that happened in the middle.
Yes.
So my question to you is, what would you say was maybe a pivotal moment in your life that transformed or propelled you from, you know, that person who was being a criminal litigation lawyer for 6 years to Kizzy of today, partner? What was that pivotal moment in the middle that made that transformation?
I mean, there may have been a couple of things that happened during that time, but I think the main thing for me was during my time as a criminal litigation lawyer, being very happy doing what I was doing. Myself and the partner I was working with were fortunately brought on to the Hatfield rail crash case, and we were representing one of the individual directors who was being prosecuted for manslaughter, whereas you have the companies who were being dealt with for what was then known as corporate manslaughter at that time.
Yeah.
And it was 3.5 years of being involved in a very intense case, which dealt with criminal law, but it dealt with health and safety, it dealt with regulation, it dealt with the difference between corporate liability and individual liability. And I think during that time, really getting down to the impact, the personal impact that this case was having on the director, I really started to see what this kind of law could mean for people and business. You know, these are people that had become directors, very senior within their organisations, never would have thought in a million years they would be criminally liable for a crash that has clearly and unfortunately killed people, but why are they personally responsible for that?
So, on what you would have learned in your journey, right? So, when you got to the point where you joined Pinson Masons in that team, before then, you know, you would have applied for training contracts and had some rejections. Before then, you would have applied for work experiences and had some rejections, right? So you would have had to build up that resilience over your initial career as a lawyer, right? Before you got to that point at Pinson Masons. So, what would you say you learned from the failures or the rejections that you faced in the past that helped you kind of get to that point at Pinson Masons where you kind of started your new career, quote unquote, in health and safety?
I was quite focused on and intentional about the training contracts I applied for. So maybe I didn't feel it as much as others, but you start to question yourself and you start to think, am I cut out for this? You know, I've said I wanted to be a lawyer, but can I really do this, seeing as people are not seeing what I see? So you do start to question yourself. I think what you have to see is that failures, rejections, are just lessons for us. It's really easy to take the advice from people when people say don't take it personally. You can't help but take this thing personally. You know, you're putting yourself out there, you're putting your life on a CV or on an application form. So people are judging you on that. If you're lucky enough, you get to interview, people are judging you on you. You know, so if people say no, it's very personal. I think what people had to do is just maybe use that.
You can't let it rule everything that happens to you after that, right? You can feel your feelings, you know, be upset, that's totally valid and it's fine. And it's probably healthy to do that, right? But then after that, make a plan. How are you going to grow? How are you going to move forward? What are you going to do differently? Did you actually really need it to begin with? Maybe you're just going to do something else. You know, there are ways to move forward after that. And I think that's really pivotal from what you just said. So I quite like that. I do kind of want to touch on, because I didn't even think about some of the rejections that partners face on a daily basis, but when you mentioned, you know, people don't want to pay fees, or people don't want to give you the work that you pitched for, and all those sorts of things, that's something that you face on a day-to-day basis. How do you manage that, and how do you build your resilience with that? Because I was saying worrying about the fact that, you know, I was rejected from a couple of training contract applications, but now I'm fine again.
There's always more to come.
Right.
And we have to know that. I was at a careers fair yesterday actually, and some of the students were saying, you know, how do you get through your day, all the hours that you spend doing this and working, and you've got homework. How do you get through all that? And I said, do you know what? You have to really think that if bad things happen, they do happen. But what are we going to do about it? We cannot sit and say, gosh, you know, woe is me, it's bad things that happen. We have to move forward, and we have to see this journey as this is a legal career, it's not a job. So we're here for a long haul. If you really wanted to, you know, if you really want to be a lawyer, you know early on, this is a career, right? So we can't sprint to the finish. It is a long haul journey. And if we were to sit back every time we had a knockback, or every time we face disappointment, we get nowhere. And in fact, someone asked a question, why is there so many people that come out of law quite early on? And it could be because they don't have the resilience to stay here in this game. And it could be because they were not really aware of what it entails.
Yeah.
So it's all a shock to them. It's a bit of a surprise. Maybe it's those people that have always had yes. They've always had the nodded heads.
Yeah. I think it's important to share some of these stories, right? Especially in the Black legal community. What value or what advice, what wisdom is there from sharing these stories about you?
I think it's really important to share stories. For one, there aren't enough of us, I would say, in senior positions in the law.
Yeah.
By that I mean Black people, but I will extend that to Black and brown people. But obviously, the lived experience of Black lawyers is slightly different from other minorities. So I can talk from a lived experience. I know that I've experienced a lot of things that have either helped or hindered my career. And if I can share those stories with those that are trying to enter the profession, who are also finding it difficult, or just don't know whether or not this is a career for them, I think it's really important for them to learn from the people who've gone before them.
Yeah.
They are the people that are going to be the next generation of lawyers, and they are the ones that are going to help diversify the legal sector properly. We've started, but as common studies have told, we are still part of that 1% club, which means there aren't, I think it's now about 110 or 120, don't quote me, but this is partners. Julian Richards.
Yes, Julian Richards.
So he did the 1% study. And I think at the time he did the study, there were only 90 of us. And it's a very similar story at the bottom. It's not that dissimilar. So there weren't enough of us. Many of us have now come up the ranks and there's more partners being made up, which is fantastic. I don't think there's a problem with attracting Black people to the law. I think the problem is to retain them and to promote them to positions of authority. And for a lot of people, there seems to be this ceiling that they hit, whereas they can't be, they don't feel like they're being promoted quickly enough or compared to their white counterparts.
Our penultimate question or final-ish question, you get to pick from the lovely pile.
Okay.
Roughly up to it for you. You pick one, you read it out, I hope you can read my handwriting, and then you answer it.
I'm sorry. Okay. If you could step into my shoes, what would you have asked yourself that I didn't? If I was you now, I would focus a lot on what makes me me. Because even when it comes to making applications for jobs or promotions, or just getting involved in initiatives, what people generally want to see is what makes you you. What makes you different from others. So with training contracts, it's a typical example. You get thousands of them, right? You then you sift through them. A few of them make it through the process. They get to interview. A few of them make it through a process, and maybe there'll be another stage. What makes us choose you over another? What makes us choose you is something that no one else will have, which is you, right? Is your personality, your tenacity, your resilience, your drive, how do you make that come through as you? And you'll only know that through understanding yourself, taking time out to know who you are, taking feedback from people who know you and love you, your friends, your family, your colleagues, and that is what I think will help you be a better person as well as a better lawyer. Because I didn't know these things. I didn't ask myself those questions. I think those are kind of the things I would have done and asked myself before I was you.
Perfect, thank you. And then finally, just to wrap up, where can people find you if they have any questions or any follow-ups or anything like that? Where can people get in contact?
So, best way to get in contact is LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I've just Googled my name, Kizzy Augustin. Also, I don't do Twitter, I just can't work it out, so you can't be there. You can email kizzy.augustin@mishcon, mishcon.com. I am on Instagram. I don't do much work-wise on there, but if you just want to see the silliness that I've got on there, you're more than welcome to find me there.